Hello, my name is Eunice Hurtado, and for the application project number 2 presentation, I chose from the Second Date podcast the title episode, Puppy Love. The episode begins with a call to Becca. Becca explains that on a lunch break from work, she ran into a man named Ricky in a coffee shop. She began speaking with this man and realized they had a lot in common, and that she really liked his personality. After speaking to Ricky for the duration of her lunch break, she decided she wanted to continue to talk to Ricky. So then, she called off of work from her lunch break, stating that she possibly could have had food poisoning and was feeling sick. Becca and Ricky then go to a nearby park and talk on a bench for a couple of hours. After talking for a while, Ricky asks Becca if she would like to do something crazy. Becca is hesitant, but agrees. Ricky then takes her to a pet store and convinces her to buy a dog together, naming it Sprinkles. Ricky and Becca then head back to her place to have a night of talking, playing with the dog, and other things. After going to bed, Becca wakes up with a note from Ricky stating he had to leave with the dog. Becca tries to call Ricky the following day, leading up to 10 calls where Ricky never responded. The follow-up. The podcast then calls Ricky to find out why he never returned Becca's calls. Ricky then explains that when he goes on dates after speaking to a woman for a bit of time, he'll take them to a pet store that his friend works at. At this pet store, this friend will see Ricky walk in with a woman and assist him in using the same dog to be given to each woman, where Ricky then uses his dog to gain trust and sleep with women. Then, the following morning, Ricky will leave the woman, taking the dog back to the same pet store. He states this in a very cocky manner. After Becca hears all of Ricky's lies, Becca confronts Ricky on the other line. She backs Ricky into a corner where Ricky then decides to lie and use the promise of a future date to see Becca again after stating that he had no interest in her, and even belittled her by calling her a moron for believing he wanted a future with her after one date previously. Becca believes Ricky and decides to give him another chance on a second date. This podcast episode relates to Chapter 9, specifically the relationship of conflict to power, the uses of power. This chapter explains that there are 4 types of power in conflict interactions. There's direct application, direct and virtual use, and indirect application, and hidden use. The direct application of power is using any resource at your disposal to get others to comply. This means using any means necessary to get what you want. The next is direct and virtual use. This is any sort of promises or threats that can lead to or involve direct application of power. Following is indirect application of power, which is using power with an implicit approach, making power known. In other words, this could be an example of moving to another state for a significant other and implicitly using this as a means to say they are indebted to you. The final type of power this chapter explains is the hidden use of power, also known as unobtrusive power, which is power that is exercised without even the need for use of words. This is often seen in familial situations where, without using words, a mother or father holds the power over the situation, including the example in the textbook where the daughter follows the mother's wishes for a wedding by submitting to her mother from fear. On this side, you'll see a table from the textbook with a more defined visual of the text that was previously defined. Ricky's direct and virtual use of power. In the definition of uses of power, we can see that Ricky used the direct and virtual use of power. Ricky uses promises to have Becca comply with another date, use of promise of him being a good man, and promising that Becca is different to him. The direct and virtual use of power explains that promises or threats can be used to be put in a position of powers to resolve a conflict. The promise of not only a relationship, a puppy, and a good man are what Ricky used to influence Becca to comply to a second date.